Guys, welcome back to Wok Wednesday. I'm Jeremy from School of Wok. This week we are doing a Biang Biang Noodle. Now there are numerous recipes for a Biang Biang Noodle, and I've tried quite a few of them. This one here actually comes from our chef Emma, and it works brilliantly. So Emma, one of our chef's tutors, thank you very much for this. Some plain flour, a little pinch of salt, and then some warm water. And the key to making Biang Biang noodles, and it's about the sound, that's where the name comes from, Biang Biang. It kind of sounds kind of biangy. Biangy? I just made a whole word? Okay. But you want to get your water into there. So most importantly, for the stretchiness of your noodles, it needs time to rest. So once I've made up a very rough dough from this flour and water, I'm going to cover it in some oil and let it rest for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. Much like any other dough, you're looking for a sort of Play-Doh consistency, and every bag of flour may be more moist or dry than the other, so you might need a bit more or a bit less, and it's warm water I'm using here. Just going to add a little more warm water. Try and pick up that extra bit of flour. Now at this stage, it shouldn't require too much kneading, just a drop more. So once you've picked up all the flour from the bowl, then you can take that out and then just give it a rough knead. It doesn't need to be super smooth, sort of just to bring it together a bit better. So long as there's no lumps in it, then once it's created one piece of dough, then you can just pinch that together into a rough ball and then sit it in the bowl and cover that well with some oil. I'm going to cover that with a cloth, leave it for about an hour and a half. So after an hour and a half, it should feel a lot more stretchy. And this is a point where, oh look, I mean that could be a noodle in itself. So this is a point where I'm going to actually knead that more, and then we're going to let it rest after this second knead for a good sort of 20 to 30 minutes before I then start to go into it. So Chris, our videographer, is telling me that this is called autolyse, where you allow the flour time to absorb the water. You learn something new every day. But what's important here is that at this point you can see I'm really kneading it. And I'm doing this so that I really sort of stretch that gluten and allow it to become more elastic. Obviously the first time we pulled everything together, there wasn't much kneading at all. So I want to get that elasticity and work that gluten. So after a good few minutes of kneading, your dough should feel a lot softer and more stretchy and elastic. But it does need this next resting time. Otherwise, as you can see, if I pull too much, it just tears. So you just want to shape that into a nice smooth ball of dough. And then I'm actually going to cut this into 4 relatively equal sized pieces. Once you've got your equal pieces of dough, just shape those. And you want them into little sort of almost bread bun shapes, and this just allows us later on to just start pulling the noodles as soon as it's had its time to rest. I've got a tray here ready for my bits of dough. I'm going to oil the tray so that it doesn't get stuck, and it's really important to be quite generous with the oil. The base is well oiled, and then I'll oil the top of each bit of dough as well. Sit that nicely on the oil. As I said, you want to make sure each lump of dough is well covered in oil. So just use that extra oil from the resting earlier and just twist that around a couple of times. And then you want to cover that with a damp cloth. Half an hour, back to the dough. Now, for the sauce and the flavour for your Biang Biang noodles, it's really simple. All the work's in the actual dough. I've got some spring onion. The green part of the spring onion, I'm going to just keep for sort of garnishing with the fresh spring onion later on. And you want quite a lot of spring onion. It's almost like a noodle salad, this. So the spring onion itself will give us a lot of flavour, but also look great with that bright green. So you want to be able to pile it high on top of the noodles. And then the white part, of course, don't waste. But I'm going to sear this very quickly with a bit of oil, along with some garlic. I don't want to cook it per se, I just want to sear it and get the flavour out, or the rawness out of both of them. So that can go into a heat-proof bowl. And you guys have seen this many a time where I'm sort of using really hot oil to sear my spring onion oil. That's a big clove of garlic, so I'll just use that one there. You can just do this completely raw, no hot oil at all as well. I quite like just taking the edge off the sort of hot, raw garlic flavour. Nice and finely chopped, so that you're not sort of biting into big chunks of garlic. But finely chopped garlic. And again, not 100% necessary, but if you're using raw chili powder, I'm going to go for about a teaspoon of this. Then I'm going to put that in with the garlic and spring onion before I sear it, and that will just sort of bring out the flavour of the chili powder, as opposed to just sort of biting into that sort of rawness of the chili. So as with your Hainanese chicken rice or many other dishes in Chinese cooking, this hot oil, like the sizzling of the spring onion, brings out the essence of your spring onion and garlic. You want to get this to really high heat. I want to make sure that the oil itself is really smoking hot before I then pour it over this mix over here. As you can see, it's really smoking hot. So I'm going to pour that straight over. Beautiful sound. Got to get that sizzle in. Mix that together. Can smell the garlic straight away, and that spring onion. A little pinch of salt will just bring that flavour out even more. And then we're going for a couple of tablespoons of light soy. Whoop, that's a very rough measurement. And the same amount of black vinegar. That's the Qingqiang black vinegar. And then usually you use about half a teaspoon or a teaspoon of chili flakes, but I've got my homemade sambal here, which we've made for our YouTube paid membership. Everyone wants to know how to make my sambal. So if you really want to know how to make the sambal, head to the paid membership area and join now. Sambal's in. Give that a mix around. Really lovely. So this is all going to coat the noodles later on once I've made them. So after this, it's the bianging of the noodles. Now that my dough's had a good amount of time to rest, the actual dough should be nice and relaxed. You're going to go one at a time. You're going to roll this dough out, and you can see how much softer that dough is. I'm going to go for a nice sort of long piece of dough, or flattened dough, and flatten it out right to the edge. And then what you do is you just draw an indented line halfway across the dough. You want to press down enough that you can just sort of tear this later on nice and easily. And then You want to just sit the dough onto your fingertips on either side, like so, with your thumbs just over the top. And then you just start to pull out whilst bianging your noodles. Biang, 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 until you feel comfortable. I mean, that broke at the end there, that's fine. But you can see now I've got a nice thin noodle. And what happens after that is that you can just take from the center and pull that apart. And you can see how long my noodle dough is. Clearly longer than I am high. I shouldn't turn that down. Okay. You want to get this on a rolling boil. So after that's on a rolling boil, then you just want to, and this is salted boiling hot water here, then you want to just lay that noodle carefully into the wok and cook it through. Much like fresh pasta, this takes a very small amount of time, say 30 seconds to a minute, to cook through. And what I'm going to do, oh, I'm still talking to you. I've got some cold water here. So once one of my noodles has been cooked, I can work on the next. So you'll see the noodles start to float to the top. As soon as it's floating to the top, give it sort of 10 to 20 seconds and then straight out into the cold water. I'm only putting in cold water to sit because I'm making a few more noodles as I go. I'll keep this boil going until I finish the rest, and then I'll probably put the noodles back in for about 10 seconds just before I serve the dish. Time to serve up. All my noodles have been bianged. They should have a really nice bite to them, and you can see I've got a big plate of noodles from that lump of dough. Whoop. I'm just going to pop them in for 10 seconds on the boil, just to reheat, nothing more. And then straight out. And that should keep this bite. You don't want to cook that for too long if you're doing it that way second time round. So it's like almost your homemade pappardelle. Very, very similar in texture and sort of thickness. Straight over. And the rest is easy because it's all been done whilst you're waiting for it to rest. So top it with a good amount of that chili black vinegar sauce. And then be generous with the fresh spring onion. Pile it high. Look at that. So you want to give that a good mix around. Make sure all that sauce gets wrapped around the noodles, and the oil wants to sort of get into the noodles so they come out nice and separate. And I'm, abiding by social distancing here and being polite for the crew. That is delicious. I'm just going to keep eating. It's the black vinegar. It really jumps out at you. And then you get a bit of saltiness from the soy. Good bite of the noodles. And it's really soaked in all that flavour. Guys, this is actually not that hard to make. Traditional Chinese cooking with a little twist from that sambal. If you like our recipes, you want to learn more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like all our social media, and click the link below for the recipe.